Hello everybody, my name's Zaezar. I'm a character designer and illustrator. I've been doing this stuff for a while, and I'm pretty much going to be here talking about how to make a reference. We're not going to sit here and talk about like how to physically draw one. That's not really going to be the point of today's discussion. We're going to go over kind of common tips, common tricks, things that you can do that any skill level are actually able to utilize when making your own reference. So let's kind of bring this back a little bit. What's a reference? Well, simply put, it's just a visual representation of the character that can be used to keep the character consistent. If you're commissioning somebody, if you're working on them yourself, anything like that. It's pretty much straightforward. It has other benefits though. So as a creator, oftentimes your art's going to drift over years. If you just use the previous art you use, eventually you'll just end up with a game of telephone and the character will change pretty drastically. And change is fine when you want it to. So having a consistent reference that you go back on, you lean onto, and you use to kind of work with is pretty much the best way to keep that from drifting into something you kind of don't want. Plus, having all your art in one thing, like the character's art in just one thing, makes it really easy to commission artists at convention halls and things like that. Pretty much, we're going to be going through what to look for, what topics and what things you can actually add into your own references, or what stuff to avoid. I've done a lot myself. Now, to kind of start off, I will be doing questions at the end of this whole thing. I actually have a lot to talk about. Seriously, I've been really working on getting this thing to fit within an hour. Put a shotgun for a bigger panel. But don't worry, we're going to be going through pretty much everything. To start off, I know some people here are going to be like, all right, cool, it's how to make a reference, but like, I can't draw. So just to kind of like, get this point home, pencil down, mouse up. Let's make a reference real quick. Why don't we? So what do we look for when we're making a character reference? Simply put, it's just information. It doesn't have to be this beautiful, beautiful piece of art. It can just be something that, well, it works. It's just something to go by. You don't have to be a really good artist to make a reference that someone like me, who's been doing character design and reference work and, character artwork for years, will be able to use. And thankfully, actually, MS Paint has a lot of colors that pretty much fits for Zay already. Now, of course, what I'm doing is I'm drawing a character that I know. I'm drawing Zay. Like, of course I know how to freaking draw him. Zay, that's not very helpful, is it? You're just working on something that you already know. Well, yeah, that's because I'm going to be making a ref in like 5 minutes. If you're going to be making your character for the first time, it's kind of a little bit important that you sit down with them. And I think you can't really get much better for just sitting down with them than like, maybe 20, 30 minutes, something like that. It might take you a good chunk of time. That's okay. You work on them for a long time. I think it's only fair you're able to spend a little bit of energy making a proper ref. So I'm just going through, what are the major stuffs? Well, they have this zigzaggy stripe on the arm. They have like this one shape on the, like around the neck. They have this one shape that goes around the hips. And is this going to be perfect and beautiful? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's a starting point. And it's something that, well, you can have. A lot of artists don't take non-visual references. That's things like, oh, that mouth is beautiful. Things like just text descriptions. A lot of artists will just simply turn you away. And, it's kind of fair because that's a lot to have to process and a lot of stuffs. And like, how did they word that one again? Does that mean that that leg is supposed to be that color or that color? There's a lot of shades of orange, There's a lot of shades of orange. So it's kind of hard when you say like, oh yeah, just make the legs, like, make this one part orange. It's like, oh, wow, that was the entire body. Make the entire body black. So just saying, all right, no, this is the correct color. Oh no, this is the right area where that thing's supposed to go. Or that's about right. And let's say you're getting like a proper commission through somebody. And it's just like, well, watch me just fill in everything. MS Paint is a well-known, fantastic art tool, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I'm otherwise. I'm going to tell you it's not perfect for this. You know what? Here's what we're going to do instead for that one. We're just going to block in this whole thing and say that's good enough, because you know what? That is good enough. We fill in this spot, you fill in this spot, you do all this. And let's put in these color gradients on the limbs, huh? So that spot's much darker, that spot's much darker, that spot's much darker. And it's just like this, yeah, this nice little color gradient going up. And let's draw in his absolutely fabulous hair. Just blowing in the breeze. Like, well, how long does this take? 5 minutes? Maybe? And yeah, again, I know how to draw Zay. I've been doing this for years. Well, guess what? It's not going to take you 5 minutes anyways. I'm kind of a speed artist when it comes to a lot of stuffs. So there you go. That's a reference. That, if someone handed this to me, that'd be perfect. It's Zaezar. Shark does shark stuff. It's like fin on back. There you go. That is all that's really needed. That's actually a lot of good information to have when someone's working on a reference. So yeah, we're not going to save that. I'm terribly sorry. Everyone can go and grab that stuff yourself. So, okay. Walking past the art threshold of being able to make a reference. Trust me, you can do the stuffs. What's the bare minimum? Say, I can't draw. I'm using MS Paint to do a thing. I don't know what I'm doing. A mouse hurts to use for too long. How am I supposed to make a reference of like multiple bodies and all this complex stuffs to it? Simply put, you don't have to. In fact, you don't have to use MS Paint. The very earliest references that I made were done traditionally. These are actually references that I made a long time ago. Like, these were done with markers. I have all the markers still right over there. And I just cropped it out in, I think actually I cropped these out in MS Paint. And I just like threw it all together here, and I grabbed some random colors and I threw them in the corner just so digital users didn't have to like grab the really variable color here. This is the very first Zay reference. Ignore the part of the top where I say, oh, I don't like drawing full bodies. It's like, that was because I was bad at them. That was just me making a bad excuse for it. But like, this ref, maybe not the best, but it's a traditional reference. You can use what tools you have on hand for making something that will absolutely work. But what's the bare minimum? Again, this can take some time. This is really difficult for me to do. I've been working on this character for a long time. I just want to make the reference. This to me is what I would consider pretty much the bare minimum. If someone handed this to me, I could make this character. I could make this thing work. It's simply a full body, kind of no excuse not to. Ignore what my traditional artist self in the past did. Kind of no excuse not to do a full body, even if you're not great at anatomy. The name of the character, the name of the designer, like your name of the owner, and a color grab. Color grab if like the character kind of needs it. A good example of that is like these little tiny stripies up here. That's kind of hard to grab from. And maybe it's not the easiest to tell that that's the same color as right here, right? So if you have like a lot of little details, just make a color grab, also called a color palette. I like grab more because that's literally what I'm doing with. I'm grabbing the colors off it most of the time. So, and label it too. You don't have to, absolutely not required to label it. It's beneficial, especially when you have a character a bit more complex like this one, like where there's a little tiny stuffs everywhere. Or if you don't want to draw like their mouth open or something, but you want to still mark down stuff, say, oh yeah, no, that's like the color of like their flesh. It's like, all right, that summarizes that really well. I don't have to draw that type of element. But this is bare minimum, right? This is bare minimum. We can do a bit better, right? We can do a little bit better. What I kind of like to see, not all of this. This is just like a bunch of examples of stuff just for descriptor's sake. Most of the time, a back pose helps, right? Especially if they have a lot of patternings that go around the back. Stripes are a big example of this. A lot of stripes don't connect on their back. But, this character here, I just needed to show off like the way the tail looked and the way that the butt pattern worked. Could I have just drawn that part in? Yeah, absolutely. But it would be weird just to have a random booty just hanging out in the middle of the image, just personally speaking. It's nice to have some other headshots. You can actually remove the hair on them. No artist is going to think that they're bald. Don't worry. But You can remove the hair on them to show what the patterning is on the back of the head, or like going up it if they have really long hair. And it lets you show other expressions and help you kind of explain the personality a little bit more. A little bit of like art notes and things of this nature definitely helps support who it is that they're being drawn. And of course, a color palette, kind of nice to have. Other things you can look at though. You can look at what clothing options they might like. So, this character likes to wear a lot of graphic tees, and notice every single thing here has different colors for her shirt. So it actually kind of shows, all right, that's the variety that we can see with her. Or, other really important accessories and trinkets and jewelry. These things are stuffs that if it's really important to the character, give us a close up of it if you can, or just, make note of it and let us know, hey, that stuff should really be there. If you have a character with really complex stuffs, I spent way too long on this arm. Genuinely, I have sheets of like 2 foot by 18-inch paper that was filled with just this arm. It's a bit crazy. So I knew I had to put it on the reference. I had to summarize it, or else nobody's going to really doing it right. So I went through and I made sure I added these little elements onto it. Character has body mods and such like that. Important distinctions are important distinctions and should be made important distinctions. And when you're going through making this thing, be sure to make it legible. Kind of earlier, this one, it's, this size, a little bit small for y'all to read, isn't it? That's at 100% size, by the way. When you're making the reference, be careful about making it like too small or sizing it too far down, just because like we need to be able to read the thing. However, there's also the flip side. That's at 100% size. My screen is a big screen here, so let me size it more appropriate for all of you. Imagine being handed this and say, go find how much the tongue can pick up on this character. And you're just going, all right, let's have a freaking searching party for where that can be. And it's this big dramatic, don't size it up too big. It's really easy to make it too large. I've been handed references that can't be sent through Discord. They have to email me a drive link to it. Maybe, consider setting the thing to 100% size over in the corner, like for most art programs, I'll have 100% sized thing, or just 100% size on your computer monitor. Put it in and just full size. You can see it now, and you can see, hey, is this difficult to understand what's going on? Like, this is a more appropriate size one. This is at 100% size. Again, zooming in a little bit for you because my screen, big honking screen here. This is a comfortable one to see. This is a comfortable one to use. And it's really quite nice. But, hey, Zay, you told us about all these extra stuff that we can do, right? Headshots, full bodies, bunch of text, like just sizing things. Zay, what do you do? What do you do for your references? So I have a thing that I call the gold standard, right? So imagine a situation, right? Artist Alley opens up at like an in-person con. Bunch of artists have all their stuffs for sales. You go there, you just had your payday. You're going, all right, I'm gonna commission everybody. You go to the first one, you slap a ref on the table, you slap a 40, and you walk away to the next one. So you can slap the ref on the table, you slap a 40, presumably contact info as well, and you walk away. What does that artist draw? If what's on the reference is enough for them to just say, standing there looking pretty, you're going to get 14 of the same image back. Yeah, it's going to be different styles, but it's going to be 14 of the same image. For me, a gold standard is something that is simple to read, but allows the artist a lot of freedom and understanding of the character pretty much at a glance. And let's kind of break this thing down, because this doesn't look so much different from some of the other stuffs I've shown, except maybe being simpler. Pretty much, this carries like all the weight. This section right here does a lot more than you think. So for me, a gold standard is just no discussion. How much can we show without getting boring? Because if we have what say this and we slap this on the table, we're going to be effectively sitting there for 30 minutes with the artist saying, no, that part, no, do it this way, maybe like that. No, that part's not relevant to what I'm at. That stuff doesn't help. You're going to be getting, again, a standing there looking pretty bit of art because they're not going to be deciphering it. So let's boil it down. A gold standard reference in my book is going to be the name, the owner of the character, species, gender, height, and weights. And by the way, gender can be however you want to do. Obviously, like if they're trans, put that down. That's important information. If they're body one thing, mind another, put that down. Absolutely helpful. And for height and weight, listen, no one's going to be judging, right? No one's going to judge the height or weight of stuff. Make it, fairly accurate. And you can actually look up charts for what certain heights would be, certain weights, like certain body types, and then add some weight for the tail or for fluff, right? It doesn't have to be exact. The reason why this information is really helpful is, let's say you slap two characters on the table. All right, cool. Yeah, this one holding the other character would be this really cute thing. And the artist draws them the same height. And so it's kind of, they're holding them like this big wedding image and they're walking away. But really the other character was actually 2 feet tall and supposed to look holding up like Simba. It's like that changes it dramatically. So having that information doesn't take much space on there, and it actually helps make a lot more of an accurate thing. And if they're variable, by the way, mark that down. There's a lot of fun that can be had. Now, this is the contentious part. I am a very firm believer that you can summarize the character in 5 phrases or less. That's it. If you need 3 paragraphs to describe the personality of someone, you should probably double check how much of that is personality and how much of that is hobbies or interests or some other aspect or even redundant stuffs. If you can only come up with 2 words to summarize somebody, they might be a little bit simple, which is fine, absolutely fine. But we're talking about my gold standard, which would be slapping it down on tables and walking away. And if you have a really simple character personality-wise, you're probably getting a lot of the same stuffs back as well. Which, again, simple personality, simple characters, like more 2D characters, people who know a lot of writing terms, are absolutely okay. But 5 is kind of the goal I go for. If I end up with 6 or 7 or 8, I take open a thesaurus and I double check, what are some other phrases I can use here? That's the nice thing with the English language, is that it kind of has a lot of nuance to every single word. I think there's 120 different words for walking or going somewhere, simply being from one spot to another, and every single one has a different subtext. That applies to personalities. Now, this character is a little bit different, right? They have 6, but she's a little bit of a special case. She knows she's a character, so it's that's kind of a thing. So she kind of gets a special little 6th spot. So how much can we summarize with just 5, Zay? That's absolutely, that's way too little. Realistic, trustworthy, kind, altruistic, and direct. This is the type of person where the person in front of them in the coffee line is really reaming the barista for something that they didn't do. So she pushes them away and is like, hey, if you're not going to get anything, get out. Goes up, orders, and then puts a 20 in the tip jar. I just made this entire situation on just 5 words for a descriptor. If I just slapped this on a table, this character isn't going to be standing there looking happy or this super shy, nervous thing. There's going to be something that might fit them a little bit better. And then we have a bunch of art notes. I put down a section that I call the quirks. It's traits that aren't physical traits for the most part, but are important to the character. And every single thing here actually... Imagine this, you're the artist at the con hall, or you're wanting to get this drawn. You want something of the character to get drawn. Loves fresh fish, found hunting it for herself. Sea images like ocean iconography, eating fish or sushi. Cold weather can be dangerous. All right, so we know that maybe not cold weather stuff so much. They're more in the summer. They like summertime stuffs with summer outfits. She hates it, but likes the excuse for hot cocoa and thick clothes. All right, sweet. Bundled up in the nice, warmest thing, big scarves, nice cup of hot cocoa. That makes a really cozy image that we can make out of this. Not everyone is really a big fan of that, and this character very much is. A plein air painter. Landscapes and oil paint. Okay, they're creative. So while they're out there and checking out, enjoying their hot cocoa, they're watching the snowfall. They're doing all this other stuffs out there, or even... they're actually sitting there with an easel and painting something that's in front of them. I've only had that drawn once. I'll be honest. It's really difficult for artists to be really good at character art and, landscape art, but it's a thing that, helps out a lot for it. She can run out of breath easily if she exerts herself. This is going to be turning into me talking through this character, but this is a really good way of explaining this type of stuff. She can't physically do a lot. So maybe like a bunch of her friends are running ahead of her at a jogging thing. She's sitting in the back saying, wait, please. That stuff actually adds up a lot. Like, it's so many different images that can come from this. And of course, she's aware that she's a character. That has come up a lot, simply being, Zay, really, you're using me for the panel example. And then I have a section that I like to call art notes, right? It's just like, hey, what's the head shape? It's very blocky. That's not a Zay draws sharks like this. Zay draws sharks with like a proper muzzle. But, I'm not handing them all my sharks. I'm handing them just this. So it's like, all right, the head shape being square is a really important aspect to the character design. And I have that noted right next to the head. This isn't in the quirks way up here. Then you have to read that and then confer, oh yeah, that goes into that section because that character. No, it's right next to where it's relevant. The hair is really poofy, right next to the really poofy hair. Talking about like your fingers and toes situations right next to her hands. The tail fin design, the accent's kind of weird. That's by the foot. I ran out of space by the head. Nothing's going to be perfect. Like how big the dorsal fin is. That's kind of a weird thing. The teeth are right next to the teeth. The color going up the back of the neck is right next to that. And of course, the fact that she breathes water and air, but has to remove the other from her lungs before she can actually breathe the other thing, goes right next to her vomiting up some water. It's just pool water, guys. It's fine. If I was handed this can make 20, 30 different styles of art out of just this. I don't have to say anything. I slapped on a table, slapped a 40, and walked away. That's awesome. By the way, artists, charge a bit more for your stuffs. A 40 for a full bit of art. Please, work with yourself there. So, yeah, there's not like a lore block. There's not a info dump. There's not like a bunch of excess things. There's just the character here. Sorry, I'm trying not to read chat. I'm really trying. It's against my better nature to trying to like avoid reading chat. At the end of it, we will be going through any questions if anyone has anything as we're going through. But, it's a lot of information. What's overdoing it do? Well, let's go back here. I have been handed... I know that you love your characters. All right. I know it. I get it. I love them too. I've been handed a 5-page booklet on a character for, I believe it was a flat, so no shading, half body image. I sent it back to the person, said, I'm not reading this. Can you summarize what I need to do? And they hand me back 3 sentences. I made a thing that was very accurate. Turns out it was a D&D character. They had all their lore background and info dump. Let's look at the opposite side. I've been handed a Google Drive that had every bit of art of the character ever drawn in it and said, hey, can you draw them? I was sitting here going, sure, but also where's the reference? Because there wasn't one. It was just all the artwork. Like, that's an amazing repository for a big piece, right? If you're doing a massive commission with somebody, that's so useful. They weren't. Knowing too much is too much. Like, reduce the clutter, reduce the excess things. This reference, this thing is too much. Absolutely too much. But Zay, why'd you make this then? You're talking to us about how to make references. You've been doing this for years, and you just said that this is one that you've made for your own character. That's way too much. That's right, because golden standard is the convention standard. There is different standards for what you need. If you're just trying to get a character down and understood and trying to get some visual for them, but you haven't even thought about the back of them yet, then this is perfect. If you have a character that's literally the first of an entire species, and you have so much you can work with, and you're not going to be taking this with to a convention, because that's really mean for you to do to people and just throw at them. I'm sorry, artists, that I've thrown this at in the past, by the way, but I'm confident you were able to pull it off. So that was a marked positivity to trust me. But this is the very first one, so there was a lot of stuff I needed to break down. This really weird body that's just this like peanut shape. These limbs with like tongues in them, and they open up and they split. What's going on with this head and these things on the back of it? Why are these leaves? What are they coming out of? Okay, cool. Like that tail is that Venus flytrap? Yes, it is. Like, this is a thing that I hand to somebody when I'm looking for a more complex thing, or it's available for people who want to take on the challenge of a species like this. It serves its purpose. It's what this thing's made for. The gold standard that I use is the hand it off to somebody and walk away standard, because that can summarize so much and it forces you to boil it down to so little things that you possibly can while still saying so much. But sometimes you gotta info dump. A D&D backstory is 5 pages for good reason. They've been working on it for so long. And if you're looking at something like this, right, doing something like this, or worried that a image is going to end up being too much information, but you can't really slim it down. That's an important aspect. The back fin is really important. The head style is really important there, and I need multiple different expressions to show stuff off. Well, do double duty. So many elements of this reference alone, by the way, sums up so much in so little. Like, how long is the tongue inside the limb? It's right there. Originally, I could have had a tongue along the bottom and a little ruler on it and say, oh yeah, the character's tongue is this long. It's like, cool, that's a bit of art that does one thing. All it does is just say how big the tongue is. How about instead, I have the maw open? That way we can see what the inside looks like. We see how the sides kind of like look when it's open. We get that look of it and remind people that these fingers are on different parts of it. So it's going to look weird when it's opened up. And we can have the tongue and show how it folds inside of it. The tongue is 3 times the length of the arm because it goes forwards, all the way back, and then forwards again. That's 3 times as long. It's intuitive. It makes sense. And I got to show that without having to like bludgeon it into your head and have this whole section of the ref just say that, or have a section for the ref just say all the other information I just said. And like over here, this image is one of my favorite things I've ever done on a reference, full stop. This character is shy and nervous and like isn't familiar with like culture in any way, shape, or form. So, hey, Fiona, you got something on your foot. Oh, really? Lifts her foot up to look at it. That's such an odd thing to see somebody do, and it fits her. Like, it also, in this ref, I get to show like more parts of her body. I get to show she has no bones. I get to show, like, again, more of her head shape. That has thrown off so many people. I got to show the top of the tail, which is not anywhere else on this reference. And I get to show that she changes colors. She can change colors at will, and she's in the middle of it right here. It summarizes so much stuff. And then I'm standing here saying, yeah, I'm a professional character designer. I've been doing this stuff for years. Look at how much you can summarize into one little thing. And you're thinking, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be 18 different things thrown together. It can be a lot of stuff that you probably didn't even notice you've been doing. Like the Zay reference. Gold tooth. That's actually has a gold tooth here. That's like, oh, cool. It's a whole headshot basically for that. No, it shows a different hairstyle, right? Everything else here has this really straight hairstyle. That one, it's poofy as heck. All right, now artists know another style they can do. It also has his mouth open to show what color that is. And it shows like another view of the teeth and another perspective of the head. There's a lot of subtle things that actually gets folded into these things that you might not even notice. I could have easily just had like a tooth here and said, oh yeah, no, gold tooth. Would have been absolutely perfect. But this lets me fold it in somewhere else. It becomes an intuitive thing that you don't have to, like, again, bash someone over the head to figure out. So awesome. We have a gold standard. We have double duty. We have, acceptance of multiple different styles of reference. Zay, it's a lot of awesome stuffs. Let's talk about some pitfalls here. Let's bring it back a little bit. So, okay. What are some things you can avoid? Some really easy things to avoid. And I noticed actually one of my images isn't actually here. Thankfully, I kept this open because I knew I would need this. Hey, first things first. That color grab is normally a circle for a reason, please. All of these color grabs are borderline worthless. Borderline worthless. Why? They look so pretty. That's part of the problem. A reference isn't always the prettiest thing you can make. A reference is oftentimes just something that is information. It's just sending information over. You can make that information pretty, but please understand what you're doing. So let's take these stars for a sample. A custom little color grab. Absolutely fine. I see that so many times, and they can summarize a different little aspect of the character. I mean, stars are 1,000.5 different bits of representation, right? Now imagine, that's the size of the ref. Can you, with a pen or with a mouse, say for certain that you grab the right color? Or are you grabbing that background tone? And furthermore, let's say, I don't know, the artist has a physical ailment. I couldn't draw comfortably for a while. My hand was shaking. I have a friend with like physical disorders, and he has to hold his hand steady when he's trying to hit some color grabs. Make it a bit bigger than you might think. Please, accessibility is a really big thing. Make it easier for everybody. You can sacrifice a little bit of the visual aesthetic to make this work, actually work and still be really good. Circles in the middle. Go ahead. It's fine. No one's going to judge you. Tiny squiggles. It looks so good and it can give a lot of personality, right? It's zippy, it's fun, it's crazy. But again, it's so small and it's so much visual noise on it that I sometimes forget there's 6 colors on this, by the way. Sometimes I think there's only 5. No, wait, there is only 5. Sorry. Proving the point there, by the way. If you're going to do zippy squiggles, do one down the middle and just remove some elements from it from the sides, right? That is 1,000 times more helpful and still has that fun element to it. And please stop doing gradients. I have had to deal with a lot of gradients. It's worthless. I'm sorry. I don't know if the artist who did that section, whether you or you commissioned it, did the colors from one end to the other end, right? Or if maybe they gave me a 10 pixel gap that maybe is a good grab. This was 5 distinct colors before I blended it together to make the gradient. Now it's just from this color to the other one. If you have a character with a gradient, cough, so much of her leg, then put the color at the beginning and end of a gradient. Have this gradient down the middle and just, beginning, middle, end. This is a good improvement. Yeah, okay, I see how the gradient works. Symbols and insignia, it's a big circle, a little circle, little circle, little circle. All those circles are huge. Stacking them, all you have is a bunch of tiny color grabs and we're back to square one again. If you're gonna have something like this, have larger sections of it. This is still a super stylized one, but any artist can still color grab from the middle and the edges, and all 5 colors here are super easy to grab. All right, cool. Zay, stylized color grabs. All right, we get it. That's what's happening here. You can't it's hard to grab the thing. Actually, no. Well, yes, but no. This one's here because don't save your ref as a JPEG. It's kind of a niche case, right? In fact, I have a thing over here. This, I had to fudge a little bit to make it act properly to how it works. Thankfully, my art program is kind of nice when it comes to saving things to the JPEG and it can handle digital formats really well. But JPEG is kind of designed for nature photos or real things. It's not so good with digital format. Again, it can be, but why would you? Because at the edges of this, let's say, that's looking a little bit light, isn't it? Let's accidentally grab the wrong color here, everybody. Those 3 are a little bit off. So let's say, I'm working on your character and I don't grab from the same spot and suddenly your character has different colors for her hair throughout the entire thing because I grabbed the wrong color from what I thought was a safe spot to grab a color from. That happened to me, by the way. There was a reference that had a texture overlay on the character. Totally fine. It was genuinely, it helped make the character look proper. And the color grabs on the sides were properly labeled, so I was able to get the right stuffs to put onto the character. But I didn't know the overlay was also on the character color palette. So suddenly I can't actually do the character correctly. And I went back and checked. This was a regular commissioner, and I saw that they had given the art that I made for them had the wrong colors in the same art touching each other multiple times. And we just didn't know. Neither of us even realized. So if you're going to save the ref, save it as a PNG. This is a PNG, and this is like a really good example for this stuff. So yeah, if you're going to make a reference, save it as a PNG. It might not be like as compressed. It might be a little bit harder to send over some formats, but also you're not making it 10,000 pixels wide, right? So it should be able to be sent just fine. I actually saw some people earlier talking about the clothing dolls. I have bad news for you. Clothing dolls, I would be very careful with. Absolutely very helpful in a lot of cases. But if you have a reference that has I call this a clothing doll, right? That's, I don't know, I resize a thing, clothing doll. If it has a clothing thing on it, 9 times out of 10, the artist is going to draw that outfit. And again, the standard that I've used for stuffs is I want to use the same reference for a lot of different arts without having to tell them stuffs. If I get the same outfit back from people every single time, it's going to get old quick, no matter how pretty it is. Now, some things are really important. Some elements of jewelry, pendants, wristbands, like watches, or I don't know, maybe like trans pride hearts. Do that stuff. Absolutely do that stuff. Like rock the things that are important to them and rock the stuff that are important to you. But if you're going to have a just general clothing thing, make it abundantly clear it's just an example, or have, I don't know, some just text stuffs like lots of graphic tees and sleeveless shirts, right? Information like that can summarize that information really well, or just say what colors they like to wear, things of that nature. If you start putting a visual on there, I'm sorry, but artists are kind of fickle sometimes. Like a lot of us are really busy, or like we don't have a huge amount of energy for poring over a reference or thinking through someone else's character, or they have ADHD or they're neurodivergent in 1.5 million different ways. So when it really comes down to like handing over a reference to somebody, if there's an image on there that shows the outfit that they wear, I'm going to draw that outfit. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm going to assume it's an important outfit to the character. And if I'm not drawing it, they might get annoyed that I didn't draw the really important outfit. Again, imagine someone has a trans pride heart on a sweater and then I don't draw it. And it's like, hey, do you just not like trans pride? I'm like, no, I thought they looked good in red. What do you mean? Okay, cool. Like, I'm just going to draw them in what's shown there. Having a clothing reference on it can show the really important stuff that, you know, might be needed on them. But you might notice I don't put it on any of my own references. None of my own references have a color or clothing doll on it. So there's a reason for that. I might say what outfits that they like, or might imply what outfits that they might wear, and then kind of just leave it at that and keep going. I'm excelling caravans and give them if I want them to be done. Absolutely. Yep. Like, absolutely. Like, if there's a series of outfits that are really important for you, then do a set of clothing stuffs that actually will help, and have that be an extra reference and send it over. Maybe even say, hey, do that one, or here's a bunch of stuffs that they might enjoy. Going back to like the gold standard that I said earlier, that again, a convention standard is one where I can go to a con, get out my phone, pull up the reference and say, hey, get a photo of this, because the internet's out in the area, or they're not able to accept an image through like Telegram or Discord or some of the other things. I don't want to have like a bunch of different references to side through. And I don't want to have multiple different printed out references to hand out to somebody, or even just send them multiple files and say, hey, bounce between all of these. Having a second reference for the really important stuff is incredibly useful. In fact, this one, I can simplify this down a lot. Like, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. That we can probably remove. This stuff, whatever. So what are we left with? We're left with a full body, a arm, and a head. And then I can just cut out some of the extra text that's not needed. And then I can summarize that up really, really small. But this ref still exists for if I want something really big, or there's some element of it that's really important for what I'm trying to commission. The least effort you can give the artist trying to draw a thing for you, or even yourself trying to remember how something is drawn, makes life a lot easier. So clothing dolls. Again, that's kind of the phrase I use for it. I don't know what the common vernacular is. I think clothing reference sheet is a little bit too long, a little bit too wordy, but clothing dolls, useful, but with concern for what you're doing. Don't just slap one on every single ref just to show an example, because that's going to be the only example you're going to get back. Also, we have a kind of a meme in my community where I ask, hey, what color's their mouth? The number of times that you do not have the mouth visible in a reference is amazingly high for how much you expect me to have the character laughing. Absurdly high. Like, go back through your references, you're going to see a few that don't have an open mouth. It's really common. Now, totally get it, right? It's not something you always think about, but I try to make an active note to put a mouth on every single reference that I make whenever I can, especially if it's, I don't know, just a simple full body thing, not mouth open. I say this whole panel, do as I say, not as I do. I forget it myself. This character's also thrown together in probably like 30 minutes. So, I'm going to say that's my excuse. I haven't updated her, so it's not really an excuse anymore. But I have the color down here, so at least there's something to work off of. That's going to be the color that's most likely used. But that's what the extra headshots are really useful for. If you have just the full body, just do like an extra little headshot and just be like, oh, just a smiley girl, it's mouth color. And probably the hot ticket item here, don't shade your reference. Some people that's completely obvious, right? Like, yeah, you don't shade the reference. For people who are kind of newer to making a reference, that might seem kind of weird. I spent so much time on this. Like, shading adds, like, there's a color grab. Shading will help people like see the shape of them. And in fact, it kind of does. I went through and I shaded this entire thing just for this panel. This actually conveys a lot of information, right? Like, all right, it lets you notice that in here is a much deeper recess. It shows the shape of the tongue here. It shows like the color and sheen of it. It shows like the sheen on it. I guess that's the best phrase. But like, yeah, it has a sticky coating on it. So it's like, all right, that's what that stuff looks like. It actually does help aid a lot of the stuffs here. Unfortunately, this character is wildly complicated. That's kind of part of the problem of why like a shaded version was a logical thing to think of. But when it comes down to it, what color is like this? Like, that's just brown. Doesn't really add up to anything. Okay, let's grab it from here. That's also brown. Let's grab it from the back. I guess it's closest to that. Like, it ends up hiding a lot of information. Even if you have a like color grab right there, it can still negatively impact the art. And honestly, a lot of the stuff you have here, you could easily not have had that problem. Like, okay, how deep is the inside of the mouth on the limb? Well, I have these little lines here to show that, don't I? And to show what that shape looks like. So that wasn't needed to be shaded. I already had like the little highlights on here, which by the way, highlights are not shading. Highlights are just like, little, where is this one? Highlights, just like little white spots here just to kind of show, oh yeah, no, it's hair. It makes it look better. That's not shading. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about shading. If you're so happy with an image for a reference, take it out and make an art out of it, but keep the reference as a reference. Like turn that into a full piece, absolutely. But, you know, let's have a little bit of sense for the information thing. I've said it before, the references are just here for information. They're not here to really look pretty all the time. In fact, the pose is going to probably look static or awkward. That's fine. That lets us see all the best stuffs. Now, what if this character is super complicated? Say my character is simple. Of course, I'm not going to have that problem. All right, cool. Let's talk about that with a character that has a simpler character, right? So let me ask you this. Do you know what 2 different shades of that light tan are on her face? Because the stripe on against the face and the nose are 2 different colors. Kind of lost, isn't it? It's really easy to get lost in what might be needed for a reference sometimes. And, you know, the excitement of making a full finished piece of art, absolutely be excited. If it's digital, crop it out, use it somewhere else. If it's traditional and you're already cropping it to try and add digital assets to it, then use it somewhere else or like work on it, or even get the photo, take the screenshot out, and then you can shade the traditional thing and make a full finished thing out of it. And it'd be kind of a fun thing to see the character in their element and in a reference. Like those things, absolutely true. Absolutely stuff you can do. But, you know, a lot of things will get kind of totally like messed up. And I actually didn't even realize this until I was already done with this thing. But this also makes these stripes on her completely impossible to use. Not only are they too small, again, going into the like, you know, accessibility things, but it's, wow, my cat's messing with something. But it's just completely muddled. Every single time there's a color on there, it's not there. And I don't have the color grab on here, kind of just to prove the point. I was so distracted with making the reference that I forgot to put the color grab on there. I'm so sorry, everybody. So yeah, don't shade the reference. Make it a separate bit of art if you're so proud of it. I have fought artists on this one, and I've always won because I've been right. Most of the time, they totally agree with me though, so it's not a common issue, but when it comes up, it is a deadly issue. So that is the quick summary of how to make a reference with Zaezar. Fraught with destructive streams and my cat trying to distract me currently because it's almost time for her to eat. Thankfully, I left about 10 minutes. I talked much faster than I was planning to, and I'm so sorry for anyone who had to deal with that. For all my regulars, you know what? You probably understood everything. If we have any questions, I will happily answer them. I will be going live after this stream as well myself, just so that's like, you know, people can come by and talk some stuff. So if you have any other questions yourself, I am very active with answering things and talking with people and showing what I do. I love this, like this stuff. This is super fun to me. I was practicing this panel a lot just so I could get it within an hour because I could not stop adding things. So if anyone has any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them here just so that, you know, summarize some stuff. So just like, hey, this is the thing I've seen in a reference. So what does that thing do? Like, why do people do that? Or, hey, how do I do this? It looks do whatever. Oh my gosh. I'm happy that y'all were really enjoying this. Even through the panel steps. Could I ask you color questions? Yes, you absolutely can. But I will actually also be willing to go through in more detailed stuff on my stream. Some people have actually seen me do full color breakdowns and why certain color formats work. I'm going to get this off of the not so great one while we're answering. Let's get on the pretty gold standard one. Opinion on 3D references, if it's not shaded. The issue with 3D oftentimes is that it needs shading as part of the engine in order to look appropriate. And shading is a problem. And especially with 3D, it's harder to tell if a thing is shaded or not, even with an appropriate color grab. Now you can get away with like, you know, having, let's say, you know, eye like that, right? That's the eye color. Are you going to do that with every single section of her and say, all right, so, you know, let's say this is a 3D ref am I really going to sit here and do this just so that you know you're grabbing the right color and not a shaded color? Yep, so I'm very happy with own ref sheet design choices. A lot of this stuff you just end up doing naturally because it just ends up working. When you get a ref back, when you use a ref and you notice a lot of issues and you go and refine it and make it better, you end up with a better reference. Point A to point now. The panels, of course, of yes, the artists were resonating. See, I've been trying not to read chat, so I'll have to go and watch the VOD for that one. Work best for characters with light blue fur. The default that always works is white or black, basically neutral tones, white through black. That tends to work with any single color. But when it comes to light, if you want to do something easy, grab something from the opposite side of the wheel. So, right, we have light blue. Then we jump to the opposite side of the wheel, find an orange, or even a variation of orange, like a nice brown, might work good. Picked all this thing you can ask him. Yes. Yep. Actually, Dusk here sent me a reference made in MS Paint just to make a full reference out of it. I actually, using just text, kind of hard. So I do charge an extra fee when working on a bit of art if it's like a pure text thing. I encourage you to spend that, 20 minutes or so in MS Paint making something pretty close to what you're looking for and then sending that my way. Heck, that saves you money. And that saves you a lot of effort with any artist that you're going to be commissioning. To force flat colors. Yes. If you can do a 3D model with flat colors, that works absolutely fine. My issue with 3D models is purely the shading aspect of it. And I understand that is a thing that is really common with 3D models, just as a limitation on it being a 3D models. So, however you can make that work and not hide stuff suddenly you need a hard line to tell where the arm is compared to the body. Stuff like that might make it a little bit harder, but yes, 3D models can absolutely do well. My cat is genuinely starting to mess with stuff. Not a question so much though. If you notice that artists keep drawing certain elements wrong and forgetting things, reconsider whether that aspect is necessary for your character. Flip side, if a artist is consistently doing something wrong, that's something that's relatively important for the character, then actually I would say put a bit of art on there to highlight it. If it's something that is what's a good way of putting it? If something that's not super important, let's say 99% of the time I have to correct artists to say that there isn't a nose on Zay. There's no nostrils on Zay. It's smooth. I have to correct that a lot. You will not see me making just a snout and say no nostril. That's not a thing. It's not so imperative to me that that's a thing that's known. But if it's a minor element, let's say it was my first time making a shark character and I didn't add nostrils and I realized that's kind of a weird thing, then yeah, consider your reference, look at what everyone else is doing and be willing to incorporate that in and learn from everyone else for your own sake. Characters are not made and set in stone. In fact, this is version 1.1. I went through and changed the ear size on Zay here and added the gold tooth. This is going to be updated slowly over the years, and that is totally fine and just shows that you are improving as an artist and a character designer. If you don't have reference art for character yet, putting together a collage with images you got on Google can be so much more helpful than big wall text. Yes. Yep. That is a thing that I have used a lot and people have used with me a lot where, yeah, Google search stuffs, Pinterest boards, so many good resources for things, not even just outfit ideas, but a weird patterning of a animal that you wanted to be incorporated. Cross foxes are a really good one. The patterning on the back of cross foxes, makes a vague cross shape, and the face patterning, everything is really distinct. If you're going to have a cross fox character or even a character that has elements of that built in, finding a cross fox and sending it over and be like, hey, use this. And that's literally a cross fox, by the way, not fox crossed with blank. It's just a cross fox is the name of the species, the name of the breed. That nose is too small by itself, no detail shot. Yeah, if there's a tiny element that's really important, then add it in, make it its own dedicated little spot and be like, hey, this is something we need to see. I got MS Paint for the colors you wanted them. So I think I'm in the clear. You're absolutely in the clear. ArtStation is life for inspiration. Yep. ArtStation is really good. I mean, honestly, browsing DeviantArt, browsing, it's DeviantArt though. Browsing DeviantArt, browsing Pinterest, browsing ArtStation, Google image searches, Furfinity. You're going to see a lot of stuffs. Crazy fact. This is actually an adopt I bought. And with the artist's permission, the original designer's permission, I was allowed to make her into a species because it was going to be a one-off monster design. And I fell in love with it and no one told me not to get her. So I picked her up. And again, with permission, this is an open species. I made the full biology for them. I reworked the design so that it kind of made sense instead of just being a one-off. And I just developed them a lot. And they're like, the original designer is on the posts on Furfinity. So they are available for people. I'm not like hiding who made the original one, but they're going to look very distinct. And it's safe to say I put in 90% of the work into the species. Cause again, it was a one-off thing. And that's so silly to me that I ended up doing that. There are 3 species references for this. I could not fit it on one image. What do you recommend for a commissioner who grabs a top 3 of references for their character? So like top 3 art of it. If you end up not having reference, you just have 3 images to work off of. Grab a flat, something with no shading on it. Grab a full body, so something that shows the whole body. Preferably something without clothing on, Disney nude, right? I mean, all these references have been Disney nude this whole time, which I used the phrase before Zootopia came out, and it was a Disney movie with a nude scene that was just like this, and I love that now it's canon as a phrase. But yeah, Disney nude of a piece, just so they can see all the patterning on such. And third one, I mean, another pose would be fantastic. Those other 2 can be shaded, absolutely. The flat one, you know, you got to be able to see at least all the colors. So yeah, if you just have a ragtag set of other stuff to work on, I mean, you can always spend 30 minutes doing an MS Paint thing. Or if, you know, you're an artist and a commissioner approaches you with, hey, here's 3 bits of art of the character to work with. Sometimes I send that back if there's not stuff I can work with. If all 3 of them are shaded or really dramatic, I kind of send it back sometimes and just say, hey, I can't use this. Can you find something for me, please? And normally they can. Normally they can find a flat, something like that. Just being really honest with the information exchange there helps out so much. I'm very glad if you didn't tell them let's go because they're arbitrary when I create design and characters still recognize well with them. Yep. Slimming it down. Not always needed. Again, this character compared to, or this ref compared to this one, I can make this one busier if I want to, but but it is nice when you can slim it down and make it easier for the artist to work with. However, I think I'm at time here and people might get a little bit, yep, just realized I'm going to put up the ending scene. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you all so much for sitting down and kind of hanging out with me as I'm talking through this and for the technical problems. It's very rare that happens right now, but you know what? The fears were real. It happened right now. I will be live right after this so that I can word good. I'll be live right after this. I just have to do a little bit of stuff. And if you have any questions or anything else, then you can come on by and say hello. I'm Zaezar on pretty much everywhere. You can also find me in the sponsor panels and such over on the CozyCon Discord. Anyways, goodbye.